Welcome to the channel. Thank you everyone for tuning in. On today's video, I'll be reviewing the Cadisen C8206 Seamaster Homage. Now, I unboxed a pair of Cadisens about 2 weeks ago, and this is the first one that we're reviewing from the 2 unboxings that I did. Now, you can get this watch for around £93, which should be around the $120 to $140 mark, depending on the conversion. Of course, I'll put that up on screen for you guys. It comes in a few different colors. You've got the blue that you can see in front of you. You've also got a black version, and they also do a bronze case with a black dial and bezel configuration. So you get a few different colors from Cadisen, and as of late, Cadisen have been doing these 38mm watches, and they've been homaging some classical vintage looking watches. Now, I was very impressed with the 6-2 mass homage, and I'm wondering if they've continued to kind of be impressive and continue that same quality level throughout these new releases. Now, I see Cadisen as a very good competitor for Pagani design, and I also want to find out is how well do these stack up against Pagani design watches. Now, specs and dimensions will be displayed on screen as I've gone through them already in the unboxing, so I want to look at that again. And the first thing I want to start on is the dial. And now one thing is bothering me about this watch, and it did bother me in the unboxing also, and that's the sapphire crystal used. This is a domed sapphire crystal, and it's been bugging me because it just seems quite hazy. There's not that level of sharpness that we usually see with sapphire crystals and just watches in general. And I am wondering if it's one of those sapphire crystals which it's really a mineral crystal which has been sapphire coated. Now, that's very difficult to tell, of course, because it gives you the same reading as sapphire, and I have checked this with my tool, and it gives me a positive reading for sapphire, but I just feel around the edges of the dial, where the hour markers are, it is a bit hazy, and I'm struggling to get that crisp, clarity on this watch. So that's a bit of a negative. It seems just slightly foggy. Now, away from the sapphire, the dial itself is constructed really well. You've got printed text up below the 12 and above the 6, and you've got a sandwich style dial. You've got a deep blue color. I think the sandwich markers have been cut out perfectly. There's no issues there. There's no rough edges. The printing is done to a very good degree, and they haven't gone with the Cadisen logo as well as the Cadisen text. They've just stuck with the text on this one. So all seems fine on the dial, and even the date window, which I don't think a lot of people like. However, it has been finished really well. You've got beveled edges on that date window, giving you some nice finishing there. The handset is fully polished. It is chamfered, but it does have some rough edges, as you can see on some of those close-ups. The length for the most part is okay. The minute hand does stretch out to the hour markers, and you'll find the seconds hand is right towards the edge of that dial. And you can see they've used this sort of faux patina or this old radium style loom across the whole dial. And for the most part, this whole patina loom is nicely matched on the hands on the dial. It's just on the bezel, it gets just slightly brighter than it is on the actual dial. Not much of a difference there. It still is a pretty decent match. Now, when we switch over to the loom, very impressed with that loom. It's been evenly applied. There's no patchiness. If anything, you'll find that the handset and the pip is just slightly duller, very slightly duller than the loom on the actual dial. And it's really good loom considering it's a sandwich dial. But in comparison to Pagani, it is a lot brighter. It seems to last quite a lot longer as well. And I'm just quite impressed with the level of loom we get at this price point, showing it can clearly be done, just not by Pagani. Now, moving on to the bezel, it's a coin edge style bezel, fully polished bezel, nice grip on there. You've got your pip at the 12, and it is a 90 click bezel. Now, I don't really mind 90 click bezels. For the most part, none of us guys really use the bezels. It's more about the rotation and the sound. And I'm happy with the sound, although just slightly tinny, but I'm not expecting a whole lot at this price point. And it does line up. The markers are slightly larger, so it helps that alignment. There is just a slight bit of movement in there, just a bit of back and forth. No bounce, no sideways movement. So pretty decent again. Now, moving on to the finishing of this case, it is all fully brushed. They've actually got beveled polished edges along those lugs, so really good features to have on a case, and I think this will definitely set this apart. I haven't seen the alternatives for this. I know Pagani Design made one a long time ago, but I didn't get to see that watch, so I don't know how close this is to the Pagani, if anything. But what I can see on this one, clean transitional lines, very nice brushing, very even and smooth enough. At this price point, you definitely can't complain. You do get a lot of quality finishing on this watch. So that is very impressive. Now moving on to the crown, you've got a polished crown with the logo. The crown shape is okay. I think the size could do with being just a little bit bigger. Sometimes, you know, your thumb actually sticks into the bezel. It doesn't really allow you to get to the crown properly, or it makes it a bit fidgety. But this crown's fine. You know, it does its job as it's supposed to. It is a bit gritty on the screw down. You can definitely feel that. And the crown doesn't feel as solid as the rest of the watch. It feels just slightly hollow. But just a minor observation on that part. It is functioning. I don't see any problems, you know, with the crown in that sense. But as you can see, I'm struggling to wind it down just due to that bezel lip. And I find this issue with a lot of these kind of vintage style skin diverish watches. So let's screw that down. Took a bit of effort. Now the case itself is 37mm, so it will weigh a little smaller. But the bezel is at 38, therefore we're going for a 38 case diameter. The thickness of this watch is 13mm. Considering it's a domed sapphire crystal and a case back that does slightly protrude, I think that's not a bad thickness. And the lug to lug is 44mm. You've got 18mm lug width and an overall weight of 143 grams. So it's substantially weighted. I love the dimensions. I think they've done the right thing here. We've also got female end links, bringing the watch down to a nice compact 44mm versus a 38mm diameter. So I think the best thing they've done with this watch is just that wearability side, the dimensions, and the bracelet itself is well fitted to the case. I don't see any major gaps or any kind of distortions in those end links. And the bracelet does feel considerably better than it does on the Pagani designs. It's not as rattly, it's not as loose. It feels, like I said, quite thick and quite weighty. You've got split pins that hold the links together. I've got no issue with split pins. I think they're much easier than the pin and collar system. And if we look at the clasp, now this is quite a nice feature from Cadisen. It's an 18mm clasp, fully brushed logo across the top, 3 micro adjusts, and yeah, quite a slim clasp. Now I know it's a dive watch. Maybe they should have got a dive style clasp with more micro adjusts, but in terms of just, you know, fit and finish, I like how it fits in with the bracelet and the brushing. Yeah, it's quite well finished actually. Fully milled internals, and yeah, I'm quite impressed with the clasp. I like how it looks. I'm not too bothered that it's not a diving clasp because it is quite proportionate to that bracelet. So let's give you a quick look at the case back. Now Cadisen have gone for a different logo. I don't know what that is. The case back is finished nicely, brushed, polished, and of course this engraving that you can see in the center. And I think it's a pair of diving goggles, but I could be wrong. Now, this is something I don't really like. I'm not a big fan of just random logos just because they look nice, but they have nothing to do with the brand. I'm sure Cadisen's logo is this sort of diamond, and I would have much rather if they had just stuck to that. So let's get this on wrist and let's see how it weighs. So here's the Cadisen C8206 on my 6.5-inch wrist. It does weigh really well. I love the dimensions of the case. It is very proportionate. As you can see, it fits right within that wrist. That 37 to 38mm case, 44mm lug to lug, and of course those female end links. Great wrap around the wrist. The bracelet is very comfortable. There's no sharp edges as well. It was quite easy to remove the links, you know, only being split pins. I like that clasp. I like how short it is. It fits in with the watch really nicely, even though it's not a diving clasp that we usually see. And overall, yes, it's incredibly well made considering the price point. I'd say it can easily keep up with Pagani, and if anything, you know, if they were just as popular, it would beat Pagani. You know, you saw the loom, great loom considering it's that old radium style loom. Of course, there's a few subjectives. I think when I read the comment section in the unboxing, there was a few mixed feelings on the dial aesthetics, but from an objective point of view, the dial has been made well. A couple of things, as I saw, slightly rough edges on the hands, just a bit of dirt and debris, but it's very difficult to get away from that. And the date window, you know, it's subjective. I would have preferred no date, but some people still prefer functionality. My biggest problem with the dial aesthetic is that crystal. As I said, it is very hazy. As you can see on the camera, this is what I see. It's just hazy around, you know, the outer side of that dial. And yeah, I just don't know why that is. And I'm not really liking the lack of clarity there. I think if Cadisen continue to do this, they just need to work on refinement and focus on build quality rather than specs. They can definitely beat Pagani and be a much better value brand than Pagani Design. So that's it from me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed that review, and I'll see you in the next video.